Thank you very, very much. Let me hear you say yeah. Yeah. I said, let me hear you say yeah. PLSA. Penguins, lions, seals, acrobats. I can't wait. This is the circus thing, right? Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association. Don't worry, we can do this. Let me hear you say, we can do this. It is fantastic to be here today. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, blimey, that Denzel Washington looks much better in real life. This is a good venue as well. I'm loving this venue. It's good, isn't it? It's not as good as a Premier Inn, obviously, but shut up. Every time I mention them, I get a free English breakfast. They send it to me in a jiffy bag, ladies and gentlemen. Have you had a good conference so far? You've had 2 days of talking about pension schemes, 2 days of having to remain sharp and focused. Tonight, you're going to need a drink. Another one. May I recommend Dragon Stout? Have you ever heard of Dragon Stout? Very popular with my brothers and sisters in the hood. 1 can, you're legless. 2, you're Stephen Hawking. It's a fantastic thing. You're my best mate, you are. It's a really good thing to drink. They don't advertise Dragon Stout on television, but if they did, it'd be something like, yeah man, drink Dragon Stout. It's a freaking coma in a can. Yeah, I know you've been having parties and stuff and celebrating. I used to drink a lot, and I don't advise it, actually, for you guys. I had a cab driver one time, thought I was from Narnia. Literally, where you going, pal? Narnia. Where? Narnia. Where do you live? Narnia. I don't know where he took me that night, but the next morning I do remember coming out of a wardrobe. And now, I want to give you a big tip. If you are having a drink later, at some point, you might be tempted to go up to your boss and give him the benefit of your advice. Don't do this. Because you'll have it all worked out in your head. It'll sound great in your head. Mr. Williams, I'm so glad I've caught up with you because I've been analyzing our whole approach to our strategic financial throughput. What actually comes out is this. I love you. You're the best fucking boss we've ever had. They all said you were a twat. And I believed them. But you're not, are you? Now, before I came here, as the nice lady said, I asked for some background on the Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association. So they sent me an information pack. First thing I want to say is, guys, you've got to liven it up a bit. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. It took me a whole week to get through it. Every time I picked it up, I was... Put some naked women on it or something. Put one on every page so that when you flip it, she finds annuities out of her butt cheeks. But do something. For heaven's sake, PLSA. Now today, we are here to celebrate William Shakespeare. And I'm going to talk about my relationship with the bard and also about how his tragedies can sometimes be transformed into comedy. Now, when my agent said you wanted me to talk about Shakespeare and pensions, I said, Shakespeare and pensions? That's a bit tenuous, isn't it? They've got absolutely nothing in common. He said, well, what about that gig you did for Halfords, John Milton and gearbox replacement? That was genius. I said, all right, I'll give it a go. So here I am. But before I get to Shakespeare and pensions, because obviously there's so much to tell you about that, I just want before we get to that bit, that core, that nugget of information that you asked me to do, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My parents came to this country from Jamaica, and they were very poor. My mum used to grow vegetables and then put them on a truck and take them down to market and sell them. I don't know what my dad did for a living, but I believe he also grew something and sold it. I'm not saying what, but it's one of the reasons I think they had to leave the country. And they came to the UK, settled in the West Midlands. Dudley. Why? We were this close to Miami. I could have been Will Bloody Smith by now. If only they stayed where they were. Jamaica is very, very cool. Very relaxed. Ever flown to Jamaica, anybody? Kingston Air Traffic Control is an answering machine. We can't come to the airport right now. Everybody is at the beach. Please land your airplane after the beep. Just a few more minutes before the Shakespeare stuff. So I grew up So I grew up PLSA and I went to school in Dudley. Nowadays, when parents are choosing schools for their children, they look at the league tables, exam results. They do proper research. Want to know how my mom selected my school? She looked out the upstairs window and said, there's a school up there in between the Ladbrokes and the Needle Exchange. That's where you're going. And it's got a fence around it so you can't get out. That's how I ended up at Bluecoat Secondary Modern. To give you some idea of what it was like, most schools have a badge and an inspirational motto. Dudley Grammar had a double-headed eagle and the words, fortune favours the bold. Bluecoats had a lemming with the words, which way's the cliff? It was tough, ladies and gentlemen. I was one of the few black kids there. I was one of 3 black kids in my entire school. I had a fight nearly every day. What did you call me? Pow! I hated that French mistress. But this, ladies and gentlemen, was where I had my introduction to Shakespeare. Having to read the part of Romeo out loud with Ronnie Barton taking on the role of Juliet. Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. Jesus, it was painful. It was like listening to Cheryl Cole before they turn on the auto-tune. It was enough to put anyone off for life. And I didn't think about my education again until 1980. I was doing, there might be some audience participation in this next bit. I was doing some summer season in Blackpool with Cannon and Ball. 22 weeks of rock on, Tommy, you little liar, all together, you little... To stop myself going insane, I made a list of all the options I had before me. And just above hitting myself repeatedly in the face with an anvil was take my O-levels. So in 1980, that's what I did, ladies and gentlemen. I signed up at Preston College, and they sent me on a preliminary course on the First World War poets, Siegfried Sassoon, Rupert Brooke, and Wilfred Owen. And at first, I was racked with self-doubt. Would I have the stamina to complete the course? What if I didn't have the time? Supposing I wasn't good enough? I was so scared. And then I thought, get a grip, Len. These guys wrote some of the best poetry of the 20th century while being shelled by heavy artillery, for Christ's sakes. I think I can manage sitting in Reading Library one afternoon a week. By day and by night, I was getting to grips with William Wordsworth's The Prelude. Anybody ever read this? It's a long poem about nature. 15 pages on grass. Come on, William, either mow it or roll it or smoke it, but not bloody 15 pages, especially if it doesn't sod in rhyme. So, pensions and Shakespeare, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I've scoured the whole of Shakespeare's canon for any reference to pension schemes, and nowhere does he actually mention them. But I did find this quote, ladies and gentlemen, and you may think I put a bit of a slant on this, but I think it reveals Shakespeare's attitude to savings. This is from Richard III. Now is the winter of our discontent, made 3% by the end of the next financial year. And all the clouds that lowered upon our house qualify as tax deductible at 1/4% above the base rate set by the Bank of England. Ye terms and ye conditions apply. You see, I told you we could do this. Now, I've got a confession to make here. Because I come from a working class background, I grew up with the attitude that Shakespeare wasn't for me. About 10 years ago, I did a Radio 4 show about it called Lenny and Will. And in it, I explored my allergy to... Explode, that'd be good, wouldn't it? I explored my allergy to the bard. I went on and on about how Shakespeare always seemed the sole preserve of posh men who spoke with a lisp, which wasn't surprising as they often had a cabbage stuffed down the front of their tights. I was lucky enough to be able to talk some of the greatest names in theatre. Judi Dench, Peter Hall, Trevor Nunn, Adrian Lester, Patterson Joseph, the Crankies, the Chuckle Brothers. All people who'd had positive experiences of Shakespeare. But I still wasn't convinced. It seemed to me that although Shakespeare grew up less than 40 miles from where I was born, his work and my understanding of it were worlds apart. But all that changed with a phone call from a northern theatre director, the very northern Barry Rutter, who told me off for being so narrow in my views. Rutter is a Yorkshireman born and bred. You want to know how Yorkshire is Barry, Len? Barry's so Yorkshire, if you cut him in half, you'd find Sean Bean sitting on a block of Wensleydale watching Last of the Summer Wine. That's how bloody Yorkshire Barry is. In 1992, he formed Northern Broadsides Theatre Company because he was fed up with upper-crust actors with la-di-da accents dominating the stage. He longed to hear a King Lear from Bradford, a Richard III from Gateshead, a Cleopatra from Wigan. Come on, I'd pay to see that, wouldn't you? Rutter said that Shakespeare is for everyone, every voice, every class, every race, every gender, every sexuality. And to illustrate, he read the chorus of Henry V, but he didn't give it Jacobi or McKellen or Olivier. He gave it Rutter. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. He spoke of the rock and roll of the language, the rhythm, the percussion and the rhyme. He equated Shakespeare with Elvis and hip-hop and grime and Lord Buckley. Remember Lord Buckley? Hipsters, flipsters, finger-popping daddies. He urged me to, and I quote, get the words in thee, gob, and stop moaning about it. And I was captivated. We then did a follow-up program for Radio 4. It was called Lenny and Will, and it was all about Shakespearean performance. I was to be Rutter's theatrical guinea pig. It came down from Hull, and in the basement of Broadcasting House, we all sat around discussing the Moor's last speech in Othello, the final 19 lines. You know, soft you a word or two before you go, I've done the state some service, and they note. No more of that. And then he stabs himself at the end. Now, the night before, I'd tried to learn it, but nothing seemed to stick. I think I was a bit nervous, you know. Working class, Dudley, bleh. But after we'd had a brief chat and a brew, we got up and we just started to do the play. We didn't analyze it. We just did it. Barry stood up and he did this brilliant thing. He acted out the whole thing. This is 19 lines, by the way. He goes, well, it's the bedchamber, see? There's two dead birds on bed, and you're there in shock, right? You've just discovered what a lying pig Iago is, so they've gone off to get him, right? And the soldiers come in, right? And what they don't know is you've got a knife. Sitting in the bedpost or behind the shield, I don't know, the designer will work it out. It gets bloody paid enough. Anyway, speech is speech is speech. Audience lean in. You stab yourself, and we all go for a bloody pint. We spent 4 hours. I've never done this before. We spent 4 hours rehearsing those 19 lines. 4 hours. And by the end, I came to the realization that I really wanted to play Othello. I said to Barry, do you think I could do this? And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, of course you can, you daft bugger. And we did at the West Yorkshire Playhouse in Leeds. The read-through, you all sit around a big table and everybody reads it. You just read the play, right, straight through. It was terrifying. I was so nervous. My Andronicus has never been so Titus. And the rehearsals went by in a flash, like, and as you'd expect from Rutter, who's very blunt, he was a very strict director. He'd sit there in a big armchair, you know, and every so often he'd say things like, you're shuffling again. Generals don't shuffle, lad. Think the Duke of Wellington shuffled, think again. Or, and this is my favourite, act with your gonads, son. And I've cleaned that up for you, ladies and gentlemen. The word he actually used began with a B and ended with Olex. Really? And we had a successful run at the West Yorkshire Playhouse, sold out and everything, and we later transferred to London to the Trafalgar Theatre. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a very intimate space. Much smaller than this, and the audience are all around you. Some of the audience are on the stage. And this one night, I had two Asian ladies, and they were wearing the niqabs. You know that? You know the niqabs where you can only see that? They were wearing that, and they were watching me from the front row of the stage, about 2 feet away from me. They never took their eyes off me all night. They were totally riveted, leaning forward. I got to the last 19 lines. There's 2 dead bodies on the bed. The Duke's men are surrounding me. I've discovered Iago's treachery, but too late. My beloved is dead. Soft you. A word or two before you go. I have done the state some service, and they note no more of that. I pray you in your letters, when you shall these unlucky deeds relate, speak of me as I am, nothing extenuate, nor set down aught in malice. Then must you speak of one that loved not wisely, but too well. of one not easily jealous, but being wrought, perplexed in the extreme, of one whose hand, like the base Indian, threw a pearl away richer than all his tribe, of one whose subdued eyes, albeit unused to the melting mood, dropped tears as fast as the Arabian trees their medicinable gum. Set you down this, and say besides that in Aleppo once, where a malignant and a turbaned Turk beat a Venetian and traduced the state, I took by the throat the circumcised dog and smote him thus. And I stabbed myself, and I heard the Asian ladies both go, and then I died. And as the lights went down, and we all realized that Othello was dead and would never return, and we feel his remorse and his pain, the audience lean in just like Barry said they would. And I heard one of the ladies this close to me say, "Shame, man." And as I'm lying there in the dark and the play is coming to its tragic end, I only hope the audience aren't watching my shoulders up in silent laughter, as one of Shakespeare's greatest tragedies was transformed, for me anyway, into one of his greatest comedies. Thank you. Good day to you. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to sit over there now to take your questions.